Brian Ortega came out. He's talking about his fight coming up with Volkanovski, which, by the way, I must tell you, what a tremendous treat. I just looked at that fight. That's a co-main event before Stipe and Francis. That's a co-main event. That is a tremendous treat to get to be able to see that right before a heavyweight title fight. I assumed it was its own pay-per-view. I assumed it had a card all to itself, is why I say it from this perspective. I want to say Tyron Woodley was on that card. I want to say Sugar Sean is on that card. I got to go back and look at it, but this thing was absolutely loaded when I saw it. 261's getting all this credit, right? 3 championships fights. I'm going to look in this heavyweight title fight, go, man, this is ever been as good of a card. Point I'm attempting to make for you. Okay. As you start to dig into this fight that's right around the corner, it is a very different matchup. This is going to be something, at least for Volkanovski, like you've never seen. Ortega's just a different guy. Ortega's going to have to suffer the same feat. He is in there with somebody who is physically stronger than anyone else he's ever been there with. By the way, Volkanovski is a competitor. He has the mind. He has the right mind for understanding time and space, for understanding a 10-9 must system, for understanding my will versus your will, not just your punch versus my punch. He's a competitor. So a really good competitor. You got to take that into consideration. Ortega had made a comment. His comment was, if I beat Volkanovski, I will not consider myself UFC champion. I will not consider myself UFC champion until I beat Max Holloway and avenge that loss. Now, far beyond any of us to pass judgment on what motivates a guy getting ready to go into a steel cage to either have his heart broken or have his live stream. Far beyond us. But I must tell you, if that is really how he feels, that is wildly unfair. And I hope he doesn't feel that way. If he wins that belt, that is his and he is the champion of the world. And I've seen a couple of guys with the mindset of Ortega. A couple of them with that mindset, and they were never happy with their career. They never had the one that the audience gave them. Daniel Cormier was guilty of that until he became the heavyweight champion of the world. Daniel Cormier was never satisfied with his belt at 205 because if you'll remember, he had that while John Jones was out, and he thought that was an asterisk. Daniel's wrong. Daniel was the champion of the world. He should be proud of that. He was recognized as that. He went on to be champ, but this is still how he felt. I mean, how unfair to put that burden on yourself when you've done everything right and achieved this level of success, but you don't pat yourself on the back just yet because you feel you had to. I will tell you who didn't do that. Michael Bisping. When Michael Bisping won the world championship, he never thought, okay, I now need to go event. No, excuse me. You want to know where Michael Bisping went after he won the world championship? He went into the Hall of Fame, exactly where he belongs. So there's a different way to look at this, and you can either feel very proud of yourself or you can hold yourself back. But I will tell you, a phrase that was coined in this space and shockingly stuck around is when Matt Hughes defended his title for the first time and said, I am now the champion. I don't think you're the champion until you defend the belt. That was a ridiculous statement that was good to catch on, and I don't think Matt ever thought that it was going to transcend our sport and start to become a cultural essence of the sport. And even Matt didn't make the statement until after he had done it. He didn't put himself in that position. He didn't put himself in the spot of I'm not really the champion until I defend it. He made this statement after it happened. I only bring that to you because to stick around and let a phrase like that control your life or a cultural aspect of the life of the sport, it was made by a guy who didn't even say it about himself. He said it after the fact. It's very relevant to know that. If Ortega beats Volkanovski, it doesn't matter hook or crook or how it got done. He's the champion. I saw this same thing happen. We had an American wrestler in 2012 named Jake Varner. And Varner had problems with the Iranian, but at the Olympic Games, he did not meet up with the Iranian. They had wrestled in a World Cup, and the Iranian had his way with Varner. But they get to the tournament, everybody shows up, the tournament plays out by a very competitive architecture known as a bracket, and Varner wins the gold medal. And somebody had the audacity to question him because he didn't meet up with this one specific guy. That's not how it works. It's sometimes you get lucky. You can chalk it up to luck. That's what you want to call it. Happenstance, fate. They call it a blind draw in the sport. Floyd Mayweather stayed away from Zab Judah. Now, don't think you have to correct me and tell me that Floyd fought jab. I'm well aware that he did, but Floyd openly stayed away from jab, from Zab. He didn't like the stance, and moreover, he didn't like the speed. He just thought it was a bad matchup. That's okay. And frankly, when they met up, Floyd was right. It wasn't that good of a matchup. It was a really hard fight for him. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the way it goes. It's a good deal if you can get it. A fighter, like anybody else, is an opportunist. You see an opportunity and you take it and you exploit it. Good for you. Good for Brian Ortega. He's got a tough fight in front of him. If he wants to go redeem it against Max, I mean, again, we don't want to take motivation away from a guy like Brian Ortega. But we also want Brian Ortega to be a little bit proud of himself. We want him to feel good about what he did, don't we? That's fair.